Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you as ever for stopping by. I do appreciate it. I hope your weekend was good. Mine was interesting. I also caught up with the one and only His Excellency John Mahama yesterday at his hotel. We look forward to hosting him this Saturday at Mindspeak with Mr. Colin Moore. And he had a lot of interesting flavour and colour to share. I'll get to the election, which is obviously tomorrow, momentarily when I get down to the Kenya component, and share my thoughts then. Macro thoughts, Brigden, who says an overvalued bond market is the biggest risk in the world for investors, told clients to take profits on developing nation debt last month, citing concerns that a correction might trigger a major risk-off move. I really don't like the setup in sovereign bonds, especially in Europe, he said. If Bund yields spike, the German stock index will crash and take EM along for the ride. This is what I was writing about in September last year in a piece called Mirrors on the Ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. My piece over the weekend was about the end zone and the mighty dollar. The end zone in American football is where a football team scores. Some teams will start the move near their own end zone and string a sequence of moves to get to the opponent's end zone. Occasionally a team will throw a Hail Mary pass and make a score out of nowhere. The dollar had been in a precipitous decline in 2017 and until last week had crashed about 12% versus the euro, and as an index against a basket of currencies was down 11%. The $5.1 trillion a day foreign exchange markets, the most liquid market in the world, had watched incredulously as Washington metastasized into a new center of global uncertainty, and as the special prosecutor Robert Mueller III's hot breath could be felt on President Trump's collar. President Trump is a unique individual, but his Twitter account gives us surgical and real-time insights into his mental state. President Trump had drawn a red line with respect to the special prosecutor in a New York Times interview, where he had said probing his business and his family's financial dealings would be a violation. Last week we learned that this red line had been crossed. Any financial expert will tell you that President Trump's financial affairs are a smoking gun. Deutsche Bank loans were surely mirror transactions where Deutsche Bank was a commission agent interposed between Trump and the real lender. Trump oftentimes proclaimed himself a genius because they were so off-market. We would all be incredulous. And these trades, these off-market trades where he sold buildings for, which were valued at $50 million for 70 or 80, were incredible. And there's a prima facie case here, and it's in plain sight. President Trump knows it, and that's why he has been demanding Al Pacino a la Martin Scorsese's Godfather-style demands of loyalty from the likes of the now dispensed with FBI Director James Comey. What was interesting last week is that the dollar picked itself off the floor, and we witnessed a rebound into the end of the week. It's nascent, but it was noteworthy. It was as if the FX markets had reached the conclusion that it is all in the price now. Maybe not an impeachment, but pretty much everything else is baked into the price of the dollar. The dollar is the elephant in the room. This week we will need to study it closely for the signals it emits. I think the rebound will gather strength because just about everyone has been lulled into a false sense of security, and that the dollar, which was deep in its end zone, has just thrown a Hail Mary pass which is said to make up a lot of ground. I was thinking of Don DeLillo's book called The End Zone, in which he says history is the angle at which realities meet. I've gone back to Jack Kerouac, nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever so on the road. We took a road trip to the Masai Mara Triangle over the weekend. Just to quote you one more Jack Kerouac, Sal, we got to go and never stop going till we get there. Where are we going, man? I don't know, but we got to go. And indeed we did. We went to the Masai Mara. We watched this Masai dance at a bush dinner, which was fabulous. It's a short video if you're interested in seeing it. I've got to give a big shout out to Anthony, who took care of us. He was our driver and fount of knowledge about just about everything. I'll put up a link to the Fairmont Mara Safari Club, which is in a lovely situation in the Mara North Conservancy. This was the scene that we came across as we drove from our conservancy into the Mara Triangle. What you can see is that a Cape buffalo was felled by 4 lionesses. And in the photograph you see one lioness still feeding, and you see hyenas and jackals waiting for their feed as well. On our way back, this was the scene, hardly a scrap of meat left, and the vultures were having their moment. And I'll also show you a little video of a lioness, a dead buffalo, and a hungry jackal. The place was teeming with lion. We saw some incredible lions, all well fed because of the amount of food that's passing in front of their very eyes. And we came across a male lion, 2 male lions. We came across a lioness with her 2 cubs. Take a look at the photographs. And you know, I've been to the Mara many times and often waited for the crossing, and it never happened. And this time we were fortunate enough to see a crossing. Where we were situated in front of us were the debris and carcasses of wildebeest that had not made it across, and the crossing happened to our right. Okay, it wasn't of the scale that you see on National Geographic, but it was the real deal. Himalayan impasse highlights China-India tensions on a windswept Himalayan plateau, usually frequented by seasonal yak herders. Hundreds of troops from China's People's Liberation Army and the Indian Army are locked in a standoff over a small but strategic piece of land. Bullets are not flying, but rhetoric is, with Beijing warning New Delhi to correct its mistake by withdrawing its troops from the contested terrain that China calls its own. India says it has merely come to the defense of its tiny neighbor Bhutan, that also claims the land, but ruled out a unilateral withdrawal while insisting it wants a peaceful resolution of the problem. In the past few days, China has ratcheted up its official demands for a swift Indian climb down, raising fears of imminent escalation. A senior Chinese diplomat in New Delhi has warned of serious consequences if Indian troops fail to withdraw. And I think Narendra Modi is boxed in here by his right wing, and Xi Jinping is giving him the big come on. And I think it is a trap that Narendra Modi should sidestep. Google and Facebook are the new media barons. It's a very interesting piece in Bloomberg. A handful of big technology companies are becoming the next William Randolph Hearst and Walt Disney. They wield enormous power over what news and entertainment get made, indeed. This photograph is the Russian President Vladimir Putin with his defense minister Sergei Shoigu gesturing as he fishes in the remote Tuva region in southern Siberia. Very interesting piece in the New York Times. Transcripts show how contentious Trump's calls were with Mexican and Australian leaders. With Mr. Pena Nieto, Mr. Trump repeatedly threatened to impose a stiff border tax to keep out Mexican products and complained about pretty tough hombres who were bringing so many drugs over the border that they had even made New Hampshire a drug-infested den. At one point he says, "It is you and I against the world, Enrique. Do not forget." Another time when he's talking to Malcolm Turnbull, he said that he worried that the terrorists like those who killed Americans in Boston, San Bernardino, New York, could be admitted to the country. "I'm going to get killed on this thing," he says. "You will not," Mr. Turnbull insisted. "Yes, I will be seen as a weak and ineffective leader in my first week by these people. This is a killer," he said. And these transcripts, first of all, I don't know where they're coming from, but they give us an insight into what's going on in President Trump's head. New chief of staff reins in White House aides and Trump's tweets. On his 5th day on the job as Donald Trump's new chief of staff, John Kelly gathered about 200 White House aides for a meeting where he spelled out in blunt terms the way things are going to work in the West Wing he now oversees. The retired Marine Corps 4-star general said he didn't care whether they'd been part of the Trump campaign or joined the administration on Capitol Hill or another corner of the political world. According to people who attended the meeting, they all work for the president now, he told them, and they had to act as one team. UN imposed strict new sanctions on North Korean exports. UN Security Council unanimously imposed the new sanctions on North Korea on Saturday that could slash by a third the Asian state's $3 billion annual export revenue over its 2 intercontinental ballistic missile tests in July. I think it's going to be difficult to rein him in, and I think the lesson he's learned is that he needed to get a nuclear weapon in order to protect himself from regime change. Dollar index, take a look at this. 93.50 is a very key level, and if we can regain it, I think then we can safely say that the dollar's going to really rebound, and we're not that far away from it. According to Mark Chandler, the dollar bottomed against the Swiss franc on July 21st and is above its July highs. US rose every day this week versus the Canadian dollar, and since Monday versus the Australian dollar. So he's calling a turnaround, but we'll have to see more evidence of that. Euro dollar has bounced to 118.08. Last time I looked, dollar index was at 93.41. Japanese yen 110.74. Swiss franc 0.9722. The pound 130.50. The Aussie, let's take a look what that is, 0.7925. India rupee 63.705. South Korea won 11.2714. The Rial 3.1317. Egyptian pound 17.7520. And the South African Rand 13.4098. Right against that top of the range level I've previously spoken about. Look at this dollar index chart from a chap called Triple Leverage, who I follow on Twitter. Again, 93.50 is the key level. Euro dollar, take a look at this 3-month chart, 118.06. Took a big hit on Friday, with Jamie at Reuters picked up. Biggest fall this year, -1%. We'll have to see whether we can hold above 118 or whether this is just a little pop higher before a bigger fall. I personally think we're going to see a bigger fall. US crude futures settled at $49.58. We're currently at $49.40. We're in a corrective phase where we've done quite well, we've rebounded, but at any moment I think we could see this break up and fall apart. Gold, last time I looked, 1258.21. Emerging markets, Catholics burn incense at the Jesus de la Merced procession during the celebration of the 300 years of the consecration in Guatemala City. Sub-Saharan Africa, Kagame had 98.7% of the vote, with 74% counted. After Friday's election, the National Electoral Commission said on its Twitter account, this result was never in doubt. I'm a supporter of President Kagame, and where he has brought Rwanda from since the genocide to where it is today is a remarkable achievement. Democratic Green Party of Rwanda's candidate Frank Habineza had 0.45%, and the only other contender, Philip Mpayima, an independent, garnered 0.72%. Mozambique's President Filipe Nyusi met with the leader of the main opposition party, Afonso Dhlakama, in the Gorongosa forest. This is a photograph from Zainab, who I follow on Twitter, picture of the day. President Nyusi listens attentively to opposition leader Dhlakama during secret meeting to Gorongosa. Also put up a photograph of the Gorongosa forest sunset. Ethiopia has lifted its 10-month state of emergency, imposed to quash anti-government protests across the country that left hundreds of people dead. Restrictions on movement, gatherings and access to media were initially imposed for 6 months and then extended, albeit in diluted form. The protest and the imposition of the state of emergency tarnished Ethiopia's reputation as a fast-growing and secure country that had been a darling of the international investment community for the previous decade. The government used to do what it has done in the state of emergency even before it was declared, Mr. Hailu said, so I don't see any chance of it not doing so in the future. It's more public relations than a relief to society. October 2016, around the time they imposed this state of emergency, I said the government need to change tack and effect a course correction. And history shows us that this course correction is one of the most difficult things to pull off. Uganda and Tanzania have announced they've started work on the construction of a 3.5 billion oil pipeline. That was a big loss to Kenya. 1,445-kilometer project set for completion by 2020 will go to Tanga in Tanzania. South African Communist Party's lawmakers will support President Jacob Zuma in an August 8 vote of confidence. That's interesting. South African all shares up 10.45% and all-time highs. This week, Moody's is scheduled to give a ratings update, but few people expect any change. Dollar versus Rand around the 13.40 level. Egyptian pound versus the dollar, that's been much firmer. A lot of money has poured into Egypt. Nigerian all share up 39.26% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 34.3%. Now, we obviously have an election tomorrow. There have been a number of articles. Let me just pick up on some points. Kenya election tensions fill the air, says the FT. Kenya's elections are among the most important in Africa, partly because, despite its searing inequalities, the country is considered an African success story. Diverse economy, visibly improving infrastructure, and one of the continent's most tech-savvy and entrepreneurial business classes. Quinta Atiana, who lives in one of the tin-roofed dwellings in crowded Kibera, says, "We have no problems so long as the elections are free and fair. Violence will only come if this election is rigged." Patrick Athara, a political cartoonist and blogger, in reality says the systems stay the same, with the elites looking after their own interests. Politics in Kenya is like a soap opera. It allows people to forget their real problems. There are other differences this time round, including the increasing importance of a plugged-in urbanized youth. Of Kenya's nearly 20 million registered voters, more than half are under 35, and most of the estimated 5 million registered first-time voters are under 25. Mr. Odinga said the youth are the ones who are going to bring change. The youth are no longer so ethnically inclined. So it's very neck and neck, but I think essentially the incumbent government has will be able to win this in the first round, according to the numbers that I've analysed. Kenya's central bank is taking an unusual approach to protecting its currency: intimidation. Monetary authorities in Nairobi have been cracking down on selling, hedging, and even making bearish predictions, according to traders and analysts. In a sign of the skittishness, none of 12 market participants contacted by Bloomberg spoke on the record, citing possible retaliation. There is a hush-hush rule on traders: either talk up the shilling or shut up, said Kwame Owino. That kind of pressure isn't sustainable, especially when you have an open trading system. It will end in tears, he said. If the shilling depreciated by a huge margin, it would impact on debt repayments, Rotich has said. But for us, it's a significant depreciation that will have an impact, and by significant I mean a magnitude of 20%. If the dollar goes beyond 120 shillings, for example, that is when it will have a big impact on our debt. Kwame says what we need to ask ourselves is this: will this escalate into a crisis, and will that crisis lead to a very big slide? I fear that is what will happen. I don't think it will. Nairobi is becoming a ghost town as the tense and tightly contested election nears. I said the man on the street has found themselves worse off rather than better off. This is a conundrum the incumbent party is rowing against. Alphonse Shundu, editor of Africa Check, says there is an ecosystem of fake news around this election. Kenyans really don't know what the truth is, he said. Kenya's presidential election winner is likely to be determined by just 9 of the country's 47 counties. This is Bloomberg. 31st of July, I wrote about how youth vote turnout is key to this election. The newly enfranchised youth vote is a big absolute number of first-time voters and is a very big curveball. Is this youth vote turned on, I asked. Will it turn out, and how will it vote? I also asked in that same article, are Cambridge Analytica deploying a similar micro-targeting strategy, and will it work? And I said, maybe to dial a few percentage points might make all the difference. I also said on the 3rd of July that the real economy needs a transparent process, a first-round result, and a gracious loser. That's the ask. The Nairobi all-share is up 18.62% so far this year. Safaricom sees Amazon as a model for Kenya e-commerce platform, which is interesting, very interesting article, lots of flavour. I've been talking about this initiative for a while. Interesting article in Business Daily, unveiling Project Safari inside KQ's intricate rescue plan. Take a read of that. Lots of detail. I think we've still got some banks holding out for now. WPP Scan Group reported first half earnings per share slid 40.909%, revenue down a whopping 22.259%, interest income down 41.059%, and profit EPS down 40.909%. They're saying that the revenue decreased by 22% over the corresponding prior year period to 2 billion. Reduction was in line with budget and was driven by one Pan-African client significantly reducing the level of marketing spend across the region, plus reduced scope of work with several other clients and with our core client in Gabon. They reduced operating expenses 21%, saying the group has seen significant revenue pressure in the first half, compounded further by the strong comparative period in 2016. We expect revenues to be stronger in the second half. No interim dividend, there's no way else to cut it. These were soft earnings. Kenya Re reported first half earnings per share was up 4.036%. Profit after tax up 3.709%. Said the first half of 2017 has presented its own set of challenges, the most prominent being premium undercutting within the Kenyan market. I think there's some good headroom for the price of this PE of 4.574. On the 8th of May, I spoke about how avocados, which are not in the commodity basket, had found an off-ramp and are at all-time highs. And I also mentioned that Kakuzi, which is listed at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, grows a lot of avocados. They reported their first half earnings per share was up 60.776%. Profit before income tax up 65.881%, sales up 25.136%, and these were strong results essentially led by avocados. If you look at the attachment there, you will see how avocados delivered the highest profit in their sort of segmented reporting. NSE 20 is up 18.51% as we go into tomorrow's election. I wish you happy voting and for a peaceful outcome. Thank you for stopping by.